I'm going to share my screen. There we go. All right. So what I want you to do in your notes to start with is these three review questions, okay? What are the 5 types of bones? A super brief description or how you would identify that bone, and then an example of each type of bone. It is 12:55. I'll give you until 1 o'clock to do that. Make sure you guys are all muted. Somebody is not muted. Remy and Pablo, you guys are not muted. There you go. Thank you. I'll be right back, guys. There's a lot of noise over here, so hold on. They're driving a giant forklift around. Okay, is that enough time or do you guys need more? Give me a thumbs up reaction if you need more time. Or sorry, if that was enough time. Thumbs up if that was enough time. Okay. Not enough thumbs up, so I'll give you guys a couple more minutes. One more minute. Okay, Dominic, what is one type of bone that we talked about on Monday?
Irregular bone.
Irregular bone. Great. Okay. Karsten, how would I identify, or what is the identifying characteristic of an irregular bone?
Well, I just like they're different than all the other types. There's
Okay, so how are they different? What makes them different?
I don't really know.
Okay. Remy, what do you have? Remy? Okay, let's try Braden.
They have edges or like points, like an irregular shape too.
Okay, an irregular shape. That's the easiest way to put it. Okay, they either have a big hole, they have some sort of protrusion or piece sticking out. Okay, but they are an irregular shape. Clara, what is an example of an irregular bone?
Your shoulder bone.
Which one?
Oh, your clavicle.
Your clavicle is actually not an irregular bone.
Oh wait, no, your scapula, or no.
Scapula, yes. Okay, your scapula would be an irregular bone. Okay. Olivia, what's another type of bone we discussed on Monday?
I wasn't here Monday, so I was gonna talk to you after class about like what we were supposed to do because I forgot how to access like the recordings.
Got it. Okay. Pablo, what kind of bone did we talk about on Monday?
Long bones.
Long bone. Okay. Aaron Stewart. Did I already call you? I did. Stipanov. What's the definition of a long bone?
A bone that's longer than the width.
Okay, longer than it is wide. Good. Colby, what is an example of a long bone?
Your femur.
Your femur. Excellent. Okay. We'll do one more. Alyssa, what is one more example of a bone type?
A flat bone.
A flat bone. Great. Ella, how do you describe a flat bone?
It's thin, flat, and protects organs.
Great. Okay. And JD, what's an example?
Ribs.
Ribs. Great. Okay. So the other two types of bone that we did not discuss are short bones, which are about the same width as they are the same length. Okay. An example would be the carpal bones, and a sesamoid bone. So a bone floating in a tendon, for example, your patella. Okay. Well done, everybody. So to start with today, we are going to discuss the different types of force that can cause injuries to our tissues. Okay. So there's two different main categories. There's direct and indirect force. Okay. A direct force is a force or a energy that is applied to a structure that causes a damage to that structure. So for example, if I drop a weight on my foot, there's a direct pressure to my foot, a direct force, and my foot is injured. Okay. Now, how that can happen, or excuse me, indirect pressure, indirect force. Okay. An indirect force is a force that is applied to one structure in the body, but the injury happens to another. So for example, if I plant my foot and twist to make a cut in any sport, I could injure my knee. So that would be an indirect force because the force is applied down towards the foot, I rotate, and then I injure my knee. Okay. So one example of a force is compression. That is a squeezing force. You are going to smash something, okay? So when you put a can down on the ground and you stomp on it to squish it, that is a compression force, okay? The exact opposite of that is a tension force. That's when we're gonna pull something apart. So I have a rubber band here, and I'm going to pull it apart. That is creating tension, okay? Third is a rotation. So I have one end is planted, it doesn't move, and the other end, let's see if I can get it out of my face here so you can see it, I twist. Well, you can't really see that because I'm too far away. Okay, so I twist it, and that can cause an injury as well. Okay. Now, the fourth example is a shearing force. Okay. So think of plate tectonics or a road, a two-way road. Okay. The forces are going to be moving in opposite directions. Okay. This is going to create a lot of friction in the injuries, okay? Or it can just create a lot of fractures, okay? So a shearing, the forces are opposite directions. In bending, I'm trying to make it so you guys can see here, there we go. Your force is going in one direction, okay? But your two ends here, where my wrists are fixed, okay? So I'm taking a stick and I am bending it in the middle to try to snap it. I take it here, my thumbs are the force, and they try to snap the middle, okay? Do you guys understand the difference in these 5 types of force?
Yeah.
Okay. Remy, I got you. You're all good. You left and came back, and I can understand that. Okay. So, oftentimes, forces applied to the body will create injuries to joints. So today, we are going to talk about the 3 major classification of joints. I would not write this down yet, okay, because we're going to talk about each one of them individually. The first type of joint is a diarthrodial joint or a synovial joint, okay? We're going to get into specifics about each one of these here in a second, okay? And the second is an amphiarthrodial or a cartilaginous joint. And the last one is a synarthrodial or a fibrous joint. Okay. So let's talk about the first one here. What I want you to do, I want you to open the chapter 15 in Google Classroom. Go to the second section or part 2. It should start on page 604. That is where this picture is, okay? I would like you to label these 4 structures in that picture, okay? So what I would do is I would just write diarthrodial joint, 1, 2, 3, 4, and label them. I would not take the time to draw them, okay? It is 1:08 now. I will go ahead and give you until 1:15 to get that done. Okay, it starts on page 604. All right. Excuse me. So a diarthrodial joint is also called a synovial joint. Okay. So the 4 items I have here are not the same that they have over here. They are similar, but they're not quite the same. Okay. So number 1 here is the synovial capsule or the joint capsule. That is the green structure here. Okay. That is the entire joint area. Okay. Number 2 is the articular cartilage, also called hyaline cartilage. Okay, so they're similar but not quite the same. The purpose of this articular cartilage is to, 1, give us a smooth surface for these joints to slide or move on, and 2, they give us a tiny little bit of cushion. When somebody starts to lose this cartilage, or it degenerates or degrades or breaks off, unfortunately, sometimes we get little potholes, if you will. Okay. So when you're driving a car along and you hit a pothole, it's a big jump in the car. Okay. Same thing in the bones here. So when we get too much of this cartilage that goes away, that's when people typically end up with a joint replacement surgery. Okay. Number 3 is the synovial membrane. Okay. So that is the red piece here in the structure, the very thin piece. Okay. That is holding the synovial fluid in the joint. The fluid is going to provide nutrients to these structures. Okay. And it also provides us a little bit of shape. Okay. And what I mean by that is if we were to go in here and pop this little bubble, this joint would, 1, dry up, okay? And so 2, the structures in here would change shape because it would dry out on us, okay? Number 4 is the synovial cavity. So that's just the space that is created, the inside of the balloon, basically. So the red would be the outside rubber of the balloon. This darker, we'll say maroonish color, is the inside part of the balloon. So that's just holding all of that fluid in space. Okay. The other key piece to these types of joints is the ligaments. Okay. Ligaments keep these joints together. If we did not have ligaments and all we had were these synovial structures, these joints would be very, very unstable, so we could dislocate them easily. Okay. Somebody just came back in. Now, diarthrodial joints have subcategories, okay? So they can be further categorized into a hinge joint, a multi-axial or a ball and socket joint, a pivot joint, and a gliding joint, okay? Each type of joint allows for a different range of motion, so either more or less, and it creates a slightly different movement. Okay. For example, a hinge joint, really you're going to get 2 movements out of it. You're going to get flexion, so bending, and extension, straightening. Okay. Think of a door hinge, the part on the door that is screwed to the wall that allows the door to swing open. A door can really only move 2 ways. It can't turn, it can't pivot or anything like that. Okay. So a hinge joint would be your elbow. Why? Something's happening to my screen. There we go. Okay. A multi-axial joint is also called the ball and socket. So in this case, you really got to know the anatomy to know the shape of the bones. There's really 3 in the body, but the most obvious one is the shoulder. When you look at the shoulder, there's a giant ball called the head of the humerus, and then there's the scapula that holds that, okay? So there's a ball and a socket. This allows for a lot of movement. Your shoulder is really actually very unstable. There are few ligaments that hold it in place, okay? There's a pivot joint, one that allows us to rotate. Now, I told you that the elbow was a hinge joint, okay? So then how is it that I can rotate my hand? Because that would be at the elbow. Well, technically it's not. Technically the radius is rotating over the ulna, okay? So that would be a pivot joint. A gliding joint could be in your wrist, okay? Now, this is a hinge. I'm hinging. I can do a little bit of movement and I can do a little bit of deviation, okay? But within those, so in the carpals, between every carpal is actually a gliding joint, okay? Now, amphiarthrodial, okay? Diarthrodial allows a lot of movement. Hold on one second. Isaiah.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I got kicked out.
Okay, I was just saying, you got kicked out like 3 or 4 times here. You good?
Yeah, I am now. I don't know what was happening.
Okay, all right, just checking.
Yeah, I'm good now.
Okay, so a diarthrodial joint allows a lot of movement, okay? There's ligaments, there's a synovial fluid, it's a lot of movement. Amphiarthrodial, on the other hand, very limited movement, okay? So the very common example for this type of joint is the ribs. You have the rib, you have cartilage, and then you have the sternum, okay? So it's bone, cartilage, bone. Now, your ribs do move, okay? If your ribs were not allowed to move, it would be very difficult to breathe, okay? That's why when you injure a rib, it hurts so bad. When you get that stitch in your side where you don't feel like you can breathe, that's a cramp within the muscles that are between each rib, okay? This allows the ribs to move. They rotate to allow breathing, but it's not like the shoulder joint where it can do a ton of movement, okay? Then there's a synarthrodial. Syn meaning none, okay? These are close to immovable. Anywhere you get 2 bones together, it can potentially move, okay? But in your skull, there are different plates, and we'll go over them later, okay? And where those plates meet is a synarthrodial joint. It is very fibrous. It is very tough, okay? They are 2 bones that meet directly together. There's nothing in between them. There's no cartilage. There's no no fluids, nothing. It's bone to bone, okay? That is part of why they do not move, is because bone on bone movement would hurt, okay? Are there questions about the 3 main categories and the 4 subcategories of joint types? No. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to categorize these 4 types of joints, okay? Now, they are all diarthrodial. That's not what I want you to do. What I want you to do is I want you to say if it is a ball and socket, a hinge, a gliding, or a pivot, okay? Again, they are all diarthrodial, okay? So it is 123. I'll give you until 128 to categorize these 4 types of joints, okay? Go ahead and do that now. All right, sorry there. I think I took a few extra minutes. The ball and socket joint is called a multi-axial joint. Okay. Mackenzie, what'd you get for shoulder?
I got the multi-axial joint.
Great, good, multi-axial. Okay. Itzia, what'd you get for elbow? Itzia? Okay. Jazzy, what'd you get for the elbow?
I got hinge.
Hinge, great. Okay. Bum, 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 bum. Isaiah, what'd you get for tarsals of the ankle? Oh, you were having technical issues. Never mind. McKenna.
I'm not really sure.
What did you guess?
Transversal?
What was that?
Transversal?
But that's not a type of joint. The joints we were having were multi-axial, hinge, gliding, and pivot. Luke, what'd you get?
Gliding.
Gliding, good. Okay. And Kevin, what'd you get for knee?
I thought it was the pivot joint. I'm not sure.
Okay. So some people call it a pivot, some people call it a hinge. There's very little rotational movement that can happen. So it's more closely to a hinge. Okay. But a pivot would be acceptable as well. Okay. Okay. Now you guys are going to have a homework assignment. Okay. I've had the other classes do this, so there's been some confusion with instruction. So I came up with a slightly better activity. Okay. Aaron Kim, the hinge was, or the elbow was a hinge joint. And the tarsals were a gliding. Sorry, I'm getting all kinds of stuff. Okay, so your assignment, you are going to make an infographic for the different types of joints, okay? With that, you are going to have a diarthrodial. You're going to have an example of a diarthrodial, and then you're going to have the 4 subcategories. Under each category, you're going to have an example and a drawing, okay? Then under amphiarthrodial, you will have an example with a drawing and a characteristic of it. Okay, so it's bone, cartilage, and bone. Okay, it's very little movement. Okay. Then you'll have a synarthrodial joint, an example with the drawing and what it is made of. Okay, so for example, I'll kind of see it. Ooh, there we go. Something like this, okay? I will post this picture to give you the example. Just so you know, no, left mirror, that, don't judge me. That's supposed to be the side of a skull, okay? Don't judge. So that's what it is, okay? This will be due by by midnight tomorrow, okay? So you're going to have the 3 main categories. Under diarthrodial, you will have the 4 subcategories. For each, all of them, you will give me a defining characteristic, an example, and a picture. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay.
Mr. Q,
Yes, Braden.
could you like put a format that we could follow in Google Classroom?
Yeah, so what I'm gonna do is when I put in the assignment, I'll also put this picture and then or a picture of my example, and I'll also give you some written instructions.
And can we make like a slide for each one if we wanted to? Like
Okay,
on
so
Google.
here's the deal. I would like it to be one page. You can do it either digital or hand drawn. Okay. I want color. I do not want a slideshow because I just gave you the slideshow. Think of putting up a poster in the classroom that has all of this information. That is your goal. Okay. So I don't want a slideshow, but you can do a digital Photoshop or doc or something like that if you don't trust your own artistic ability. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, you guys go ahead and you can leave the meeting. I will put up the assignment in a minute. Olivia, I will lead you to where the class recordings are, and then I'll go post that assignment. Okay? Thanks, guys.